With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and as a result, was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power. The one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which we suggest as a program of recovery. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe in a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them, made it direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others, continued to take personal inventory. When we were wrong, promptly admitted it, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for his knowledge and his will for us, and the power to carry that out. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order! I can't go through with it, but do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and to personal adventures before and after make 3 clear, pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he were saw.
Thanks, Murdoch.
I am going to hand it over to Tad to do our introduction. Tad is our squad council president.
What up, everybody? I'm Tad, and I'm a drug addict. So this next person that I'm going to introduce, I've known him for about 12, 13 years. He's been my sponsor off and on that whole time. I've been the one that's off. He's stayed on. But this guy has been huge in my life. Maybe I didn't figure it out, but no, that has nothing to do with him. He has been a constant reminder of what God and this program can do for you if you want it and you follow these simple steps. This guy has been a huge supporter. He's, I've talked to him in jail, in prison. I've talked to everywhere I could talk to this guy, and he's always had the same message. And he's been a constant in my life, and he's one of my best friends, and I'm just super excited and proud and humbled to introduce Jason B.
Thanks, Tad. Jason, alcoholic. I also have done a lot of drugs during my life too. I sobered up on 3/20 of 06, so I've been sober ever since. It has not been a struggle for me since 4/28 of 06, approximately 11 58 p.m. From that point on in my life, sobriety was, it's actually been pretty easy. Prior to that, trying to stay sober was terrible. Because I wanted to stay sober. I didn't like doing the stuff I was doing, running with the people I would run with. The way my family would look down upon me, I didn't like any of that stuff. Not only did they just look down on me, they didn't want me around for multiple reasons. For the most part, I guess I came from a normal family, whatever that is, and my parents are not alcoholic or drug addicts. I guess maybe that would be normal. my experience with trying that for the first time. When I was younger, my mind was probably preoccupied, I guess you could say. Coming at it from like a doctor's point of view or a medical point of view, preoccupied, with drinking and doing drugs. Later on, 5 to 7 years later, my mind was completely obsessed with alcohol and drugs, and that was the holy grail of my life. My whole life, evolved around that. And from the time I woke up, the first thing that was on my mind was, I needed something to take that down, And from that point on, it was, trying to satisfy that unyielding urge. I remember the first time I tried to stay sober, sincerely, like putting a lot of effort into it. I think I was just before I turned 18. Wasn't my first time attending the fellowship, trying to stay sober off meetings, but I've been to multiple treatment centers, inpatient and out. And I got this idea in my head that I've heard going to meetings, meeting makers make it, you gotta go to meetings, you gotta get a sponsor, and you gotta do stuff like, stuff like that, and that's what I did. And I managed to stay sober for a month, just going in and out of meetings, as much as I could. And that in itself was terrible. I mean, I felt more insane trying to stay sober than I was trying to chase and continue being drunk and high, And my first experience with the meeting, I thought it was a cult. I mean, that was my first impression. I was like, I walked into a meeting, there's probably only about a handful of guys there, and then they went around and they started talking, and it was moving in a circle. And I knew that I had to talk, and I introduced myself, and that was all I could say. I was absolutely petrified trying to communicate with these people, just basic communication, weather talk, whatever you wanted to call it. I couldn't do it, and I could not wait to get out of there. That was my first experience with attending a meeting. I mean, people in meetings seem like decent people, good people, and for the most part, and that's not how I perceived myself. That's not how I felt about myself. I mean, because I wasn't a good person. But anyway, when I was trying to stay sober, going to meetings, that wasn't working, and I started drinking and doing drugs again, still going to meetings. Kick me out. They would give me a hug. I'd be crying in a meeting. They'd give me a hug and say it's okay. They'd try to console me and make me feel good and stuff like that. And it wasn't a short time after that I did something stupid again and back up in county again. And I had prison time hanging over my head, and I wasn't aspiring to go to prison. Finished my time, they let me out. I couldn't abide by my probation. They picked me up on a warrant because I kind of went AWOL. I wasn't going to visit my PO because I couldn't get around, the randoms, the random drug tests and the breathalyzers and stuff like that. And I knew when I had to see them, and I still couldn't get around that stuff. It's just, once I started, there was no stopping. That's the best way to put it. And my body was just saturated with, alcohol and drugs. And I finally went in to go see him because I just figured I'd execute my time. Execute my time, get the law off my back, and I figured I could be free to do what I wanted. And, I remember sitting in front of him, and I think this is where me getting well actually started to switch. But I was sitting in front of this guy, and he said, Jason, why can't you stay sober? I thought you really wanted to stay sober. You were going to meetings. I mean, it seemed you were doing well. I mean, I'm pretty good at putting on a front and pretending, you know. And I didn't have an answer for the guy. You know, I basically clammed up, became speechless, and I don't know why I couldn't stay sober. And that feeling. I remember one time when I was in Sherburne County Jail, I was afraid to get released from jail to the outside world because I kind of knew where that would lead, and I was going to Bible studies in this jail, and I remember all the guys, they put their hands on me to pray, and at that point in time I was crying too. When I got released from jail, I was right back at it again, you know. I knew how I was, you know. I was just like an animal, you know, in like survival mode. You know, I was homeless for quite some time. Nowhere to go. My dad kicked me out as soon as I was 17. It was probably pretty hard for me to do. He did it to protect the rest of his family, basically. And I was the oldest of all my siblings. I was brother and sister. And you know, the police took my car. I couldn't do that anymore. Slept in the crawl space of his house for about a month. I did that. Gets cold in the winter, so parks and playgrounds and stuff like that. You gotta kind of stay moving when it gets cold in Minnesota. I've been roasted out of businesses too, trying to stay warm in different businesses and stuff like that too. But anyway, it got bad, for a while there. And when I'm sitting in front of my PO, when I think I finally started to get well, prior to that, it seemed to me like I was doing everything I could to get my life together. I mean, I was working a job, trying to make an honest living. I was attending meetings. I wasn't homeless anymore. And that question you asked me, why can't you stay sober? I'll never forget that. I had no answer for the guy. Normally I had some answer from being, in the treatment centers and meetings, but I was silent. Silence is that was my answer for the guy. And he finally said, Jason, are you depressed? Is that why you can't stay sober? And I looked up at the guy. I said, no, it's just depressing. I can't stay sober. That's what I said to the guy. And I don't know if that pulled on his heartstrings or what the deal was, but he didn't send me to prison, and he should have. I mean, that's where I belong, separated from society. And he said, well, I'm going to send you to treatment one last time.
I mean, if you don't stay sober this time and complete your treatment, you will. You'll have to do your time and stuff like that. And I was working a job at the time, and he had me go get an evaluation, and I ended up getting in at a Rule 25, which was kind of interesting too, because I had a job and I shouldn't have been able to do that from what I understand, because I shouldn't have qualified. But I don't know if they're just trying to get me well or what. But when I look back at that experience, I think it was when I started to get honest. I think that's what I attribute that to. Not only get honest with, people I was talking to, but I started to get honest with myself, which I think is a bit more important, But when I'm doing my evaluation, and she threw it back in my lap. She's like, well, where do you want to go to treatment this time? What do you think? Which was very abnormal to me. And I said, well, I heard about this treatment center in Cambridge, and
the only thing that I remembered about it was co-ed, and the girls' rooms were right next to the guys' rooms, and that's literally what I remembered about it, and that's why I wanted to go there. Like, I wanted to get well, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to be well. I guess I don't know if that's how you say it, but I'm gonna hold to stay sober in this treatment center, and I'll never forget this too. This is kind of a pivotal thing for me early on in my sobriety. I had had enough of the treatment. I'm not gonna do it. I could teach this stuff. I know everything there is. This happens, early on in recovery with a lot of people, not just myself, but I know everything. The judgment is just back on me. I know what's right and what's wrong, who the hypocrite is, and blah, 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 blah. I had all this judgment that I suffered from, condemnation judgment, and I didn't like that stuff. But anyway, I'm sitting in this treatment center and refusing to do their stuff, and they said, Jason, you can't just sit here and not do nothing, you can't just eat and have a warm bed to sleep in. We will kick you out, And they're like, well, what do you want to do? And I wasn't used to this kind of stuff. What do you want to do? Throw the option in my lap. That's crazy when you think about it, But I remember sitting in there and I was like, you know what? I'm going to write about them steps on the wall. They got the poster on the wall, the summary of the 12 steps. I'm going to write what that stuff is. I haven't done them, but I'm going to write about them and tell you all about them. And that's what I did. And I wrote that paper and basically skimmed through like the NA book and the AA book and put some stuff together. And at the end, I remember the last few sentences to wrap this whole thing up was basically, I just want to stay sober till I get off, get off probation, and then go back to drinking and drugs. And but ultimately, I just want to be free. That's what I put in there. And again, just being honest. And that was the response I got from the counselor and the other people I was in treatment with. I wasn't expecting any kind of a response like that, but it was kind of a neat one. And I remember the day after that, the next assignment was we had to read letters that our family had written us. One of the things treatment centers like to employ is they try to guilt alcoholics and drug addicts into getting sober, using the family and stuff like that. That guilt ate me up for a while, and I tried getting sober for family and whatnot, and that guilt never kept me sober, And everybody's reading letters from their family. My family wasn't coming to visit me. I didn't get any letters from my family. Like I said, my dad kicked me out when I first turned 17. When I showed up at my cousin's house to get money that he owed me, when he answered the door, this is a different cousin than the one I was referencing earlier, but he'd answer the door like, "Hey, Jason, what are you doing?" And he'd step outside the door and then shut the door behind him. It's like, "What do you want?" And I was like, "Well, I'm just here to get that money you owe me. Do you have it?" And he said, "No, I don't have it." He wasn't inviting me in or anything like that. "Jason, make yourself at home. Relax." There was nothing like this. And going to the treatment center, I didn't have anything for my family. I didn't really want them there anyway because I didn't want them bringing up all this stuff. I was sick of it, and I was sick of hearing the crap, I know. But there was this guy named Kelly in the group. He was reading through the letters. He got all kinds of letters from his family. And then he got to the last letter. His little brother had written him. And in this letter, his little brother was talking about how he thought he was just the coolest guy admired him and looked up to him, wanted to be like him, you know. And by the end of that letter, he was talking about how he was ashamed he was even related to him, was embarrassed when someone would say, hey, aren't you so-and-so's brother, you know. If my brother would have wrote a letter and if he was honest, it would have been exactly like that. And what that did for me, what that letter was, it brought all that internal unmanageability that I didn't know how to deal with, just brought it right to the surface of my brain, and it was just bubbling, the emotional pain. And I remember going back to my room, and I said, I mean, I couldn't stand drinking and doing drugs. I just couldn't stand it anymore. I couldn't stand being sober either. You know, the torment of the insatiable urge that needed to be satisfied, you know, the emotions. I mean, if you were to ask me, Jason, how you feel, like, I remember one of the things they used to do in that treatment center, they had this poster with a bunch of different faces on that poster, like cartoon character faces, and they used to want you to talk about point it to which one you were feeling today and explain why. I hated that. Because I didn't know what I was feeling, to be honest. I just know it wasn't good. I avoided feelings because I didn't have good ones. And yeah, I went back to my room after dude read the letter, and I said, God, I need a miracle. I'll do anything. That's what I said. And I've heard other men in this fellowship and women say that similar type of thing before. And I said it like it talks about in the AA book, without any type of reservation, you know, whatsoever. You know, I mean, I meant it. God, I need a miracle. I'll do anything. You know, I'm getting goosebumps on my arm now, you know, reminiscing about that and sharing it with you guys. But my life kind of started to change after that moment. Life started to get abnormally easy for me, you know. And one of the things that happened was the very next day, a guy came and gave a talk, and he was talking about God in the steps and saying some stuff I'd never heard before. I mean, I attended quite a few meetings and treatment centers, and I was probably thinking about myself so much I couldn't hear what anybody was saying anyway. But this guy, I mean, when he spoke, I mean, you listened. You know, you couldn't not listen to this guy when he talked. I mean, he could capture your attention and hold it. And the stuff he was saying about God in the steps is, I still have come across few people that had that kind of presence when they spoke, whether it be up here or in a meeting. It was almost like with authority, but it wasn't sensationalized. Like, I don't know how to explain it, you know. But anyway, I asked this guy to be my sponsor. Pretty nervous to do that. The only thing he was concerned about was me doing the steps. That was it. He listened to me talk for a little bit about this and that. I didn't do much talking anyway, you know, with this guy. I didn't really know him. I wasn't sharing anything with him. I mean, I learned a long time ago that, I mean, you cop to nothing, even if they got you on video, you know. And yeah, and I started doing the stuff out of the AA book as best I could. And I remember after I got out of that treatment, and I went to a halfway house in St. Cloud, Focus 12, is where they sent me. And I was in the middle of doing inventory the best I could at the time. Basically what it was like I made a list of everybody I hated, I made a list of everybody I was afraid of, and I made a list of everybody I had sex with. And that was my inventory at the time. It was different from what the treatment center had me do in their treatment center packet inventories. But then he also had me make a list of everybody I'd ever harmed and what I did. And that all that stuff made for a good fifth step. But when I was sitting there looking at all this stuff, I mean, I didn't want to be this kind of person anymore. You know, I didn't want to hurt anybody anymore. And I wanted to be a better person, someone that someone could look up to, you know, that sort of thing. And I remember putting my hands on my book and basically kind of doing 6 and 7 a little bit out of order because I haven't done a fifth step yet. But I'm praying to God to remove this stuff from me and make me a better person, you know. And at the same time, I have these thoughts that I'm not even sure if God is real, but I know that if God isn't real, I'm screwed, you know, because going to these different wind-up joints where I ended up, I mean, I didn't get well there. The medications that they put me on, they never cured me, you know what I mean? It was just like there was still something going on, and I didn't know what the something was. That's the best way I can explain it. And I put my hands on my notebook, and the weird thing about it was, you know, my hands got warm, and I pulled them away, and the first thing my brain told me was, you're imagining things, you know? And later on that night, I'm praying again. I spent a lot of time praying that night. And the family I came up in, that we went to an Emmanuel Lutheran church, you know, growing up. And so a lot of the ideals that I got instilled into me about God were those ideas. But when those people were talking in those places, I couldn't understand what they were saying. Today, I still have a hard time understanding what they say. But I wasn't sure if Jesus was real. I wasn't sure if God was real. And later on that night, at 11:58 p.m., at the corner of 33rd and Veterans in St. Cloud, God showed up. Jesus showed up and zapped me with the light that came out of his eyes and the sound that came out of his mouth. The light engulfed the whole room, and then it focused on my chest, and it felt like I was being electrocuted. And then, just like that, God was gone and the experience was over. But, I mean, from that point on, you know, I'm getting goosebumps again thinking about it, but life has been so drastically different for me. I mean, Christians, they always talk about being saved. In Alcoholics Anonymous, they always talk about, you know, being free from the obsession. You know, being free from the bondage of self, too. I don't know about you guys, but I've tried being a better person, and I'm not very good at being good. So I know that I need some kind of divine help. And, I mean, I can only do so much. You know, something as simple as swearing, for example. Try to watch my language, try not to swear. What do? I find myself swearing more. I don't know if I'm just become more aware of it, but I just find myself doing it, especially when I get around the right group of guys, you know, work guys or whatever, you know. But I had the type of mind where I was scared to tell anybody about that experience because I thought I really went off the deep end too. That I thought for sure if I told anybody about this, they'd definitely get me on some kind of medication, stuff me in a padded room with an I Love Me jacket on, and there I'd be, you know, forever. And I was even scared to tell my first sponsor about that. But I thought maybe that, yeah, I did maybe way too much X and LSD and mushrooms and sticking needles in my arms and just way too much hard stuff, you know. That's what really happened. Except for there was two different things. I was completely different after that experience, and my roommate that was sleeping in the room next to me with the door shut. Shortly after that experience, like a minute afterwards, the door swung open, and he came out with a weird look on his face, saying some stuff. I was still gathering myself from what happened. He went outside to have a cigarette, and he came back in, and I started talking to him about that, you know. It was the next day or a few days afterwards or whatever, but the day after that experience, it was like I was in heaven on earth. You know, I was sitting outside of the halfway house, the picnic table, and I was looking at the grass, and it was the most beautiful grass I'd ever seen in my entire life. And it was green, and it was like it was glowing with life. You know, the grass was alive. And I looked up at this ash tree, and this bird flew into it and landed in there, a robin. And I sat and I watched it for a moment, and it was like heaven on earth. You know, it was like I was in harmony, and I felt connected to everything. That's the best way I can describe it. And after a few days, being in that state, it slowly went away, and the judgment came back, and all of a sudden I knew what was wrong with everything again. And you know, I went and did a fifth step. Incredible experience. I've done multiple fifth steps since then. Nobody's ever said, "Hey, Jason, you know, you need to not call me anymore after a fifth step," or nobody's ever called the police or anything like that. And the amends I had to make, I thought for sure that I'd end up in prison, and that was kind of the whole reason why I started doing this stuff. Was I just wanted to get off paper and not go to prison, you know. And I never went to prison for the amends I made. Nobody ever took a bat to me. You know, I ripped off a couple different guys, and these are not the type of guys that you want to rip off, you know, and made amends to them. Yeah. My financial amends took me about 4 years, you know, all the restitution and back taxes and all that stuff, and paying everybody back that I'd stolen and ripped off, making all the different types of amends to family and friends and coworkers and everybody that I hated. See, I finally did an inventory out of the book, the way it's outlined, and that was a game changer too. That changed, again, it changed the quality of my sobriety and kind of dismantled the judgment machine between my years, and made amends to the people that I wanted to hurt. You know, people that I thought owed amends to me, you know, I made amends to them. And I didn't have to try not to hate them anymore. When I look at this whole process, I sum it up like basically simple algebra. You know, basically what I remember from it. I actually learned this from watching the Matrix movies one time. It dawned on me, but it's like you identify the problem to, like, let's say it's negative n. You simplify it down to its most basic form. You can simplify it down to negative n. How do you get rid of negative n? With positive n, and then they cancel each other out. You're kind of left with 0, you know? And to me, that's the whole process of step 4 through 9. Is I kind of reversed the taking, and I learned to give, which is completely opposite to what is natural to me, you know? Naturally, I'm just basically, I'm self-consumed, and all I care about is myself, and I just want to satisfy my selfish desires at your expense sometimes, whether I'm aware of it or not, you know? And yeah, today, I'll tell you a bit about what it's like now. I already had mentioned staying sober is not that hard, you know? My sobriety, I'm not dependent, and I don't put my trust and reliance in humans because they'll fail me, you know? I don't put that trust and reliance in my sponsor. I don't put it in a meeting, you know? I don't put it in myself. My trust and reliance is upon God, because in every problem I've ever had, the solution, when I just do His will, you know, take corrective measures, which He has laid out, and do His will, it's amazing how effective that works. I haven't come across anything yet that has not worked for. The negative emotions that used to torment me, along with the obsession, I mean, they're gone. They got cleared out. That stuff comes back once in a while, but luckily, I keep doing this stuff for one reason. Not because it sounds like a good philosophy or anything like that, but because it works. That's why. That's it. I do it because it works. And it's what has become, what once was scary to me has become natural. You know what I mean? And it's kind of where my mind goes to now. It wasn't like that before. Today, I'm not on paper. I haven't been on paper for quite some time. I got my driver's license back. I got my own vehicle. I can drive legally in the state of Minnesota and all the other states. I actually got a commercial driver's license, Class A. And I'm not medicated today. I don't take anything illegal or legal. People want me around now, which is nice. It wasn't like that before. My family invites me over for stuff. Once in a while, well, it seems like lately, a lot of the times I can't make it, but it's pretty neat, you know, having family invite you around and stuff like that. At work, the place I work, I basically started out at the bottom, moved my way up. It's kind of crazy and surreal how that happened too. I mean, I've been fired or most of the time quit jobs before I've been fired or just not have shown up, that kind of stuff. But now I work for a company. They've given me a company truck, phone that I don't have to pay for. I don't have to pay for fuel, that kind of stuff. And I'm basically in a manager type position where I got to manage a bunch of guys underneath me. And I got 3 beautiful kids and a beautiful wife that came with me tonight. You know, I didn't ever think I was going to get married, especially with like, a beautiful chick like that. I'm not kidding either, and I'm not just trying to say a bunch of nice stuff. If I were to design like a perfect wife, there she is right there, no joke. I think Tad came over one time, and Tad said to his girlfriend, they were talking, I'm like, what are you guys talking about? And we were like, we're just talking about how perfect Deb is. You remember that, Tad? We were watching the football game or something like that. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine anybody better. And for the most part, the way she looks at me is just, I mean, she adores and respects me, you know. And people didn't look at, you know, I mean, people didn't look at me like that before. When I would try to take respect from people, it never worked, you know. And when I started giving, it's weird how you receive, you know. And then that's, to me, logically, that doesn't make sense, but it's just kind of interesting how that all played out. My dad, out of all his siblings, like for example, he put me, like if he dies, I'm in charge of stuff, and his safety deposit box, I'm the only one that can access it besides my mom, his wife, and my aunt, who tried kicking me out one Christmas, for Christmas when I was a little kid. She made me executor of her estate, you know, which is kind of baffling to me. And I've had supervisors at work come talk to me about, they want to come to me for counsel, I guess, if you will. And, you know, guys at work. And it's, you know, and I can't take much credit. I mean, I can't take any credit at all, really. The only thing I can really take credit for is doing things I didn't want to do. But there wasn't anything left, you know. And what occurred is, to me, is so indescribably wonderful. Like, I just wanted to stay sober till I got off paper. Today, life is completely different. I got all my felonies expunged, pay a lawyer for that. Got my firearm rights back now, so now the state says I can play with guns again, which they deem me responsible now to play with guns. So that's what it's another little hobby of mine. It's fun to do, you know, shoot. My dad likes hunting. I go hunt with him to hang out. It is pretty fun, you know, doing that kind of stuff with family and that kind of stuff with the guys. You know, it's if I could just leave off with this, it's pretty simple. It's God and the steps. And once I found out the steps were in the AA book, the long form exactly on how they do them, and once I did them like that, they worked. And all of a sudden sobriety was not a big deal, it really wasn't. I remember when I used to sit in meetings and see people get medallions and key tags, and I'd see guys get 9 months, even like a year and beyond. I remember thinking they're just full of crap. There's no way. I couldn't even get a 30-day chip, and now I get chips for one reason, to basically show others that it is possible, and hopefully I can articulate it in quite the right way and capture someone's attention, so where they can relate and they can see that there's a way out, and for me, God in the steps was it. It's nothing really profound or anything about it. I mean, there's like 200, I've heard this before, over 200 different 12-step fellowship programs based upon the Alcoholics Anonymous program, and if it didn't work, that stuff wouldn't be around. And I go to a lot of different fellowships, and because I've done a lot of different stuff. I don't know what more else to say, except for if it wasn't for the grace of God and for the time that others have spent, trying to help me, I wouldn't be here today. So anytime I get a chance to definitely give that back, I try, and sometimes that's caused me problems in my life, but I do, and that's all I got. That'll pass.
Thank you so much, Jason, for coming and sharing your experience, strength, and hope with us. In closing, I'd like to thank everybody for attending, and for the people who listened in. You will be able to get your recap on this on our Facebook page or on our YouTube channel. We will also in the future have these on Zoom as well. We do not broadcast any faces or names. These are strictly just, we have rotating images, so we do protect people's anonymity, but we do want to be able to share these stories with people. So again, Jason, thank you so much for allowing us to do that. In closing, everyone is welcome to remain for a little bit if you'd like to visit and to ask the speaker any questions. And please help me close with a responsibility statement. Who is responsible? I am responsible. When anyone, anywhere, reaches out for help, I want the hand of AA always to be there, and for that, I am responsible. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, Eric.